Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video, I want to go over binary thinking and how this can be killing your chances at success. So binary thinking is basically a bias that we all have, and as we go through life, we kind of treat it as multiple choice in a way, right? We look at a situation in life as either right or wrong, depending on the information that we were given during our formative years, or that we've picked up along the way as we were busy developing, and so on and so forth. And we kind of see this type of thinking as we kind of traverse life. We see this often and often. You see this especially in politics, where people are either on the right or the left side of things, right? They actually even call it left and right, and they will brand it as either right or wrong. So the left thinks they're right and the right thinks they're right. And this is not really a good way to go through life, because you kind of slot yourself and you kind of limit yourself, right? You trap yourself into a way of thinking, and this is busy damaging you. So some of the best thinkers in the world have been able to think on both sides of the spectrum. If you think about people like Einstein, Newton, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, these guys are really good at playing both sides of the field. They won't just pick one thing and just believe in one thing and nothing else, right? They'll usually kind of like oscillate between the two spectrums. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more in detail in just a second. But we also see this with athletes. Athletes like Michael Jordan, when back in the day there was this bias around NBA players, and they would go around and say, hey, you're either a good offensive player or you're a good defensive player. And then Michael Jordan came around and he was really good at defense and really good at offense, and he was able to play both the left and the right side, both the right and perceived wrong side of things. Another example could be Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, a really heavy dude, punches extremely hard. So he was, back in his prime, a heavyweight boxer. And you would think, like, if you watch heavyweight boxing matches, when the guys punch, their punches look very, very slow. It almost looks as if it's in slow motion. Now, I used to box when I was younger, and I remember going up against heavier guys, and it always felt like it was in slow motion. But Mike Tyson, on the other hand, he was very quick. So he had the speed of a lightweight boxer and the punching force of a heavyweight boxer. So yeah, you can see him playing both spectrums, right? So both biases. On the one end, in order to have a lot of speed, you need to be lightweight, and in order to punch hard, you need to be heavyweight. But he was able to do both. So he could, he was kind of actually like in the middle ground, yeah, but he was playing on that objective truth line. And another example of this from the investing side could be from someone like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett loves playing the game of contradiction. He says, when in the marketplace, when looking to invest, when a lot of people are investing, you want to kind of shy away from it, right? So when everyone's talking about it, when you get into the cab and the taxi driver, he is busy talking to you about Bitcoin, or talking to you about like some cryptocurrency or some really good stock that he's investing in, that's generally an indication that you should not be touching it with a stick, or you should, if you have a position in that whatever he's talking about, that stock or crypto or whatever, that's a good time to get out. Because oftentimes, when something is taken to its extreme, it becomes the opposite, right? It gets to a point where there's a lot of delusion, and then all of a sudden it flips over. And when it flips, especially in the stock market, people crash and burn, they lose a lot of money and they cry. So when the cab driver or your granny starts talking about this really good investment, you should not be in it. And according to Buffett's logic, when no one is talking about it, when everyone is busy being fearful, when they're talking about the market conditions and how it's not the right time to invest, that is when you want to invest, right? So when there's a absolute bloodbath, and the streets are running red with blood, you want to come in and you want to start investing at that point, because that's when everyone is jumping out. And again, when something is taken to the extreme, it gets to a delusional point, right? So where people are extremely undervaluing things, that's going to flip eventually and it's going to go up, right? So in the stock market, you would want to get in when everyone is trying to get out. So that is basically just like a little bit of a snapshot of what we are doing here, right? But I mean, we make decisions based on this line, and there's a few of these. For example, a person who is an introvert, or let's say okay, you have an introvert and you have an extrovert. I think that should be a name. Let's see what else. You have someone who is, like let's say extremely excited all the time, and someone who is extremely, maybe calm all the time. Someone who is a divergent thinker, and then someone who's a convergent thinker. This is, I'm just trying to kind of highlight how often we put ourselves in certain boxes, right, with multiple choice. So as we go through life, we might say, hey, I'm really, really extroverted, but I'm bad at being introverted. I cannot stay at home, whatever, and staying at home, is really bad for my mental health. And when starting a business, there's going to be a time when you're going to have to be both. You need to be an introvert. You need to know when to stay at home, when not to go out with friends, when not to, mess around in the streets and hit the clubs and just chase off the girls. You have to be introverted, right? You need to close the door and sit for like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 months until you get what you need to get done. And there's also a time when you can't just do that anymore, right? You have to be extroverted. You need to let people know what type of product you're busy selling. You need to talk to people. You need to jump on the phone. You need to be, setting appointments and closing sales. So you need to be able to play between both of these, and you need to be able to time it, right? You can't be the guy who's also excited all the time, right? Who's just jumping and, giddish, and he can't sit still in his seat. And you also can't either be the guy who's so zen and, so calm and just meditating 24/7 and getting nothing done. There's times when you need to be calm in a situation and observe and meditate and be mindful and present, when making a big decision. And then there is times where you need to put a lot of energy into something and say, okay, now's the time to get excited. Now's the time to get my team excited and the people around me excited, right? You also have people who are, let's say, convergent and divergent thinkers, right? So a divergent thinker is someone who thinks big, right? So yeah, you are, okay, and you have a lot of ideas, right? You have so many ideas. But then you also need to get to a point where you're taking all of these ideas, okay, and you need to kind of like narrow them down into like maybe one or two. So if you've got like 10 ideas, like you're thinking big, right? You're a big thinker. So let's call it brainstorming. Like you're brainstorming and you're thinking, okay, cool, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. But then you also need to get a point and, get to a point where you say, okay, fine, I've got all these options. Now I'm going to kind of narrow that down to my best or two best options that I'm going to do. I'm going to stick on that and I'm going to get that done, right? This is kind of the equivalent of taking out a pen and a paper, writing down your goals or your to-do list and asking yourself simple questions. Okay, cool. What thing is going to move the needle the most? If I can make anything on this piece of paper come true, any one of my goals, which goal would that be? If I had a magic wand and I waved it over it, right? What would that one specific goal be? Then you take that and you put that on a new piece of paper, and now you say, okay, fine. Now you start listing. You take that goal and you break it down into sizable bits that you can eat, right? So sizable pieces. And you say, okay, fine, these are the steps that I need to take in order to make this one goal come true. And you often find that this is how you make a lot of progress in life, right? Everyone has, time, energy, and attention. Your tea. So in the morning when you take your cup of tea, you can either put it in, like 10 different directions, okay, doing 10 different things, or you can take all of this energy, all of these arrows, and you can take your time, energy, and attention, and you can put it in one direction. You're going to make a lot more, progress in a specific direction. So let's move on a little bit. So, you're probably asking yourself a question now, like, how do I actually define, or how do I understand what is right and what is wrong. How do I find the thing that I am meant to be doing? And you can think of this in terms of business, right? So in terms of business, you're not going to jump in the shower like most people think and come up with this crazy like idea out of thin air. You're going to get into the shower, you're going to start washing your hair, and you're going to be struck with genius. Lightning bolt hits your head, and all of a sudden you've got the best idea under the planet, under the blue skies, and you're going to implement this idea, start a company, and you're going to make billions. This is delusional thinking. You're neither going to like walk up to someone and then them just randomly give you an idea. I'm not saying that type of stuff doesn't happen. Yes, it does happen, but it's a lot less common than most people think. The way in which we start businesses, the way in which we know what to do, is using the law of contradiction, right? Being a contradictory thinker. So doing what all these great people, all these billionaires, all these geniuses do all the time. And we go and we look for the problem. Okay. So, on the one end of the spectrum, we have an idea, and on the other end, we have a problem. But now we go and we look for the problem, because the problem, becomes the idea. So by discovering, what this thing is, what is this, right? We go and we ask people questions. We say, hey, what are you busy struggling with? And we see if we can tie that in with our expertise. So, we've got a certain skill set, and we see if we can solve this problem with our skill set, or if we need to develop new skills in order to solve this problem that they have. And oftentimes when we look for this problem, the problem becomes the idea. Okay. And if you want to be on the receiving end of money, right? You want to be on the receiving end of money. Okay. You have to be on the giving end of value. Okay. So you have to give value. You have to give someone value. Okay. In order to receive their money. And always remember that, right? You are giving value by solving the problem. Okay. And the idea is now you're on the idea side, right? So you're on the receiving end of money. So by solving the problem with your idea, you're giving value, and you get paid in the marketplace. You get paid in direct proportion to the problem that you're busy solving, right? So the bigger the problem, the more value you will receive for the problem. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier about how, this kind of looks. So you have this line, which is called the objective truth line, okay? And you have people who kind of like oscillate between the extremes. So at the top over here, okay, of the graph, we have an extreme, and at the peak and at the trough as well. So right at the top and at the bottom, we have these two extremes, and people always oscillate between these two extremes in life. So to give you an example of this, someone who's bodybuilding, okay? A bodybuilder, for example, will say, hey, you need to lift heavy weights 24/7. You need to go to the gym 7 days a week. Don't give yourself time off, and you need to eat a lot. Not withholding all the stuff that they're busy taking. A lot of them are busy taking steroids and all this stuff, right? So they can push themselves a bit further, but then, like you have these Olympia guys who are busy saying, you need to do this and you need to train and, like minimize your time off. So you have guys that really go to the extreme. You have other bodybuilders who are responsible that say, hey, look, you can't do that. You need to take time off and you need to rest. But what we often find is, if you look at these guys, anything taken to its extreme becomes the opposite. Anything taken to its extreme becomes its opposite. Okay, anything taken to its extreme becomes its opposite. Always remember this. Okay, start that. Write it down. Put it somewhere where you can see it every single day and understand this concept. So, the bodybuilder who's saying, hey, train 7 days a week, lift heavy, and eat a lot, okay? It gets to a point where it kind of tips over the other side, and now that person who went super extreme gets injured, Okay, and now they're sitting with like maybe sometimes permanent injuries, right? So they go from having like this really aesthetic, healthy looking body to being, maybe like a cripple and really injured and having like no muscles at all, or sometimes becoming extremely fat because of the amount that they ate, right? So then they at the bottom of that, right? So they took it to the extreme, okay, on one side, and now they are suffering because life needs to balance. Okay, the extreme on the other side. You also have people who are like into, the complete opposite of that, right? They say don't lift heavy at all, right? So they're on the opposite side. They say don't lift heavy at all. Use light weights, train a lot, 24/7 as well, but eat maybe less. And then, they could also maybe take it to a point where, they're training super hard, they're eating one meal instead of 6 meals, and now they're suffering from malnutrition, right? And the organs start failing. So we see this even in the marketplace, right? You can expand this out further. Everything kind of follows this exact same pattern. I truly believe that even during election times, these things, follow the same pattern. You have a president who, on the one hand, like he's, he comes in, his policies are kind of okay. Maybe he's, very neutral, blah, 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 blah. And, he takes his policies to a really extreme level. And when he's at that top level, it kind of tips in the opposite direction. And now you start, saying, hey, this president that I voted for, I prefer, the opposing party's point of view. Now, the opposing party comes in, okay, and they are the complete opposite view. And, then they take things too far as well. So maybe you have a president who's really aggressive with his policies, and then you have someone who's not aggressive enough with their policies, right? So then you always have this kind of oscillation between, someone kind of changing. Like in America, you have like your Democrats and your Republicans, right? So they'll choose like, maybe Democrat, but then the Democratic policies are kind of like too overbearing and it pushes people over the other side. And they're like, no, I want to start voting Republican because, like this is just way too much. It's too much for 4 years. And then you have a Republican president who comes in and he just, forces, his way of thinking. And like the next 4 years are kind of like hell and they build up to it. And then they get to the point where it tips in the opposite person's, favor. If you had a president who's able to kind of stay in the middle, okay, and, he's kind of able to play both sides in a way, that's a president who you would vote for 2 terms, right? And you won't have this complete oscillation, and most people would back those policies. So guys, this is just a quick little, snapshot. Like I say, we kind of box ourselves in. We kind of think that things need to be done a certain way, and we kind of label ourselves as, let's say, we communicate. Here's another example, right? So we're busy communicating, right? We either a good communicator, or and then we say to ourselves, hey, no, I'm a really good communicator, but I'm bad at math. Why can't you be both? Why can't you be a communicator who's good at math, right? We'll maybe see a person who's really like, let's say, he's a good public speaker, and then you'll have a person on the opposite side who says, no, I can't do that because I'm really shy. So you'll have this really confident person, and then you'll have this really shy person. And you'll say, no, I can't be this confident person because, I'm shy and I like this. And you'll kind of justify, you'll look for reasons as to why you're telling that story. So it's very binary, right? It's all ones and zeros. And you are like, your mind's like a software, right? So let's say, let me just come back up here. Okay, you have the software, which is your mind, okay? And your mind has got programming. And your programming that you're busy running, it's very binary. So like wherever you've boxed yourself in these categories, it's going to look something like this. You'll have like, let's say, green represent 1 and red represent 0. So you'll have something like this. Okay. And your programming will be very, very binary, okay? But this is not how you get anything done. This is not how you become a successful person. You have to be a person who's able to kind of play both ends of the spectrum, right? You need to know like, okay, now it's time to shut up. Okay, there's time for talking, and then there's time for doing, right? If I'm gonna, there's time for talking, and then there's time for doing. Talkers are not doers, and doers are not talkers. So, when I need to shut the door, I need to block all distractions, I need to put my phone in another room, and I need to do the work. And then right afterwards, I need to flip that switch, and I need to get on the phone, and I need to talk to people, and I need to close people, and I need to make sales, and I need to get on social media, and I need to make videos, and I need to, kind of like bring attention to me. I need to start outflowing, maybe like attention. I need to outflow, let's say, value, so I can start inflowing attention, right? So you need to kind of like be able to switch between these two things. And it's like once you really understand how to do this properly, and how to understand how to apply this thinking to yourself, your life will completely change, because then you will no longer look at yourself as a person who kind of, like the rest of society, slots yourself into these categories, traps yourself by what you're choosing. But you're actually able to play both sides, because why can you not be a good communicator and be good at maths? Why can you not be introverted and at the same time be extroverted, right? So you have to be able to play the law of contradictions. We see this happening all the time. We see all the greatest people do this. And we see people, going between these two extremes all the time. The stock market, you see people who are extremely confident and then extremely pessimistic. And the people who are confident, they keep plowing money into it. And everyone says, okay, cool. And, like sheep, we all follow the same pattern. People are like sheep. This goes back to caveman years, when you would get hungry, and you would have a friend who's hungry, and then your friend would get up and be like, hey, there's a tree, I'm going to pick a fruit, I'm going to eat that fruit. And you would just watch him, right? And you would watch to see if anything bad happens to him. And if nothing bad happened to him, you could then, there's a good chance that you could go to that same tree, pick an apple or pick a fruit from that tree, eat it, and nothing would happen to you. So we kind of have evolved to do this. It's kind of like it's kept us alive, but it's a flaw at the same time. Like, it's a pro and a con because, you have evolved to kind of create these shortcuts in your head and in your brain, and you would look at something and be like, okay, fine. Like, if I do what this person is doing, there's a high likelihood that I'll succeed. So when you see other people, succeeding in the stock market and make money, you think to yourself straight, okay, fine, they're doing it, so I can do it. But then it gets to a point where it's completely irrational, right? It reaches the peak of this, of the wave, and it just gets to a point where it cannot stay there. It's delusional to stay there, and the complete opposite happens, right? Life needs to balance. When it's taken to its extreme, it becomes opposite. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you understand this concept. I could go more in depth in this. There's so many more examples of how we do this, but you need to sit down with pen and paper, and you need to see how you can identify where you stand, with this very binary thinking, and see and come up with a way in which you can kind of do both, because you can do both. And if you can do both, you will have unlocked one of the greatest secrets to business success and personal success in your life. I hope that makes a lot of sense. Please let me know down below what you think of this video. Please subscribe, comment, and share, and give it a like as well. And if you like this type of content, let me know, and I will be creating more. So till next time and the next video, take it easy, take care, bye-bye.